Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Guitar Talk. My name's Mike Higgins. I'll be your host today. This show is about guitars, all different styles of music and performers and equipment. We love to talk about vintage equipment, and some of the latest trends today are pretty impressive that we see coming from the major manufacturers, in addition to the small boutique builders who are doing some incredible work. So we hope you come away having learned a little something about the guitar and about music in general. I'm very excited about today's guest. I got to meet today's guest at an open mic a number of years ago, and he's a very diverse musician, can play in a bunch of different styles. He's a pro educator and teacher for over 40 years throughout New York, Florida, and Massachusetts. He's written many self-published books for keyboard, piano, bass, harmonica, as well as the ukulele. And he plays all sorts of different styles: country, jazz, blues. He's a great fingerstyle player. Played in many bands, done the bar gigs just like me, been all over the place. He's a worship leader for his church. And I give you Doug Large.
Hi, Mike.
Did I get it all in there?
I think you got most of it.
We're going to have to trim that resume down a little bit, son. You've done a lot of work in your time.
Yeah, well, it happens when you get old, you know.
Who's old?
Well, not me.
No, not indeed. So thanks for being on today. It's great to have you.
Thanks for inviting me.
And so let's talk a little bit about some of the things you've done in your career. I know you were in a fusion band down in Florida.
Yeah.
What was the name of that group?
The Percolators.
The Percolators.
And, well, Percolators didn't have regular members. I'd have charts for everybody, and there were no rehearsals. I only used musicians like Florida's top jazz rock musicians. And they'd just come up and do the gig and read from charts, and they were phenomenal.
Yeah.
And two of the musicians that were in the band, I always like to try and play with people way better than me.
I've told kids that all my life. That's
way
the
over
way you
my
learn.
head. The bass player in
Yeah.
this band was a way better guitar player than I'll ever be. So almost an impresario kind of a guy putting things together. The keyboard player had just left Jimmy Buffett's band, the Coral Reefers.
Yeah.
His name's Michael Shuden. Phenomenal keyboard player, just superhuman keyboard player. He was in the band, and everybody's got Michael Shuden's stories. I mean, he's just a crazy man.
Yep.
And there was another guy in the band that would come through. I'd have different bass players, different keyboard players when they were available. And excuse me. And this one, I hope you can edit that. This one bass player, people would say, if you can get Randy Ward to come up and do this gig with you, that would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I called him up. He said, sure, I'll come up and do it. And there was not much money involved. They just enjoyed doing the genre.
Of music, yeah.
And with the other players, could try and get some great players up there. And he played a 6-string bass. And we started off with a Latin tune, and we were playing along, and everything sounding great and everything. And then I nodded him to take his solo. And everybody stopped playing.
That intense, huh? Yeah.
We just stopped playing. We're looking at this guy going, what?
Yeah.
He's like Joe Pass on the bass.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, playing chord melodies, but smoking. And
Wow.
just looking at the guy going, what is that? So had a lot of fun with the Percolators.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know, it's so important to have diversity in your playing. I mean, I know a lot of specialty guitar players who are the master of the universe in a particular style.
Right.
I've never been that guy. I've always been the Swiss Army knife guy that could do pretty good on just about any gig you put me on.
Me too.
And as a working full-time musician, especially in my younger days, like yourself, you know, you had to adapt quickly, maybe be able to read a chord chart, even if you weren't a great sight reader for melody. you had to know what a chord chart looked like, what a coda meant, first and second ending meant, and
Right.
and play the extensions that the chords required.
But beyond that, you and I think, are kindred spirits in that everything interests us. We're curious about everything.
Absolutely.
Didn't want to, okay, I can do this, but I saw that guy doing that.
Yeah.
And I'd like to, what's he doing? I want to know about that. I'm curious about that.
When I was young, and especially in those formative years, I mean, anything from George Harrison to B.B. King to Jimmy Page, these would catch my interest, and nothing else in the world would matter. And then when the fusion era came in with Mahavishnu, John McLaughlin,
Right.
it was like the world exploded or something.
Right.
And I took a great interest, probably like yourself, in all those great fusion guys like Alan Holdsworth and
Yep.
Mahavishnu and Larry Coryell. And
Yep.
I could never play like any of them, but it made me aware of sounds and approaches, and it changed.
Even if I could steal one lick,
I was good for the week if I got one little glimmer of information from guys like that.
you know?
Absolutely. Now, I would imagine you bring all that diversity to your teaching.
I do.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, when I first started, there were people that are interested in classical guitar, so I teach them, the Carcassi studies. But as time goes on, as you know, fewer and fewer people are interested in taking music lessons, let alone classical guitar.
I know.
And blues guitar players, over time I've tried to specialize in my instruction with things that other people can't do, other teachers can't do, to make a niche for myself.
Right.
And strangely, over time, that's turned me into a piano keyboard instructor.
Interesting.
I teach guitar and bass still, but it seems that the majority of my students are now keyboard students, because I developed a unusual method for instructing keyboard that, though I write traditional notation
Yes.
and read slowly, as guitar players do,
That's me for sure.
I developed this, and this is back in my 20s, started developing, well, how do jazz musicians, how do rock musicians actually think about what they're playing? And they, we think numerically a lot of the time. So you can change keys instantaneously. And also, the 1-4-5 method, the Roman numerals, that
Yes.
kind of thing. A lot of people don't know it. A lot of even guys out there making a living don't know that system. And so I concentrate on that, and that ended up developing into something I call the SDN, Scale Degree Notation Method, which is all numeric and intervallic and extremely simple. And I get people, pro players that I teach or classical players that I've shown this to, and they go, why didn't somebody show this to me 30 years ago?
Yes.
Well, they didn't know it, and they didn't know how to explain it. So that's pretty much what I'm doing.
And I find each student, whether they're entry level or highly advanced, there's always everyone has a different entry point that gives them that aha moment when they suddenly realize the fretboard now makes sense to them.
I love that.
Whether it's learning diatonically, the Roman numeral system, which for me was the easiest way to understand it all, because growing up in country and blues-based environments, the band leader would just go like this.
Exactly.
And hold his fingers up, and you had to get with the program pretty quick or you wouldn't get called back to the job, because they might be holding up a different finger next time. But all kidding aside, everyone's got a moment where somehow there's a breakthrough when you're explaining the way a scale works or a chord works.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
it's nice that you've developed a way that's an alternative method
to get that.
To get there.
That light bulb to go on
Right.
for a student. That's a turn on for me. And when I'm learning something, because I can, continue to learn, and
Of course.
I get new. I go, oh, that's really cool. And then I love that, of course, when a student gets that. I've got a story. I don't know how much time we got. You've got 100 stories.
Roll,
I got 100
we got it.
stories. There was when I first moved back to New England, I was trying to get more gigs, some jazz gigs. And there was a trumpet player that was working down. In the winters he'd be down in Boca, that area, Delray Beach. And during the summer he'd be up in Hyannis playing, a trumpeter. I'll think of his name in a moment, but he's gone now, sadly. But phenomenal player. And I called him up and I said, "Can you use a guitar player?" And he says, "Well, we're playing this afternoon. Come down, set up, and jam along with us. I'll check you out, and if I like the way you play, then I'll get you some work." And I've never had this happen to me before, but we're setting up and we're playing along. Okay, I know some of the standards that he was doing, in the standard keys.
Sure.
And he's playing along with one hand, and he goes like this. 2 sharps. I go, what? We're in F.
Uh-oh, terror strikes. Yeah.
And I'm going, gulp. So, okay, I adjust. And that, in the same song, he changed keys 3 or 4 times doing the hand signals.
Right.
And I'm going, whereas the country players, they hold up a finger.
That means the 2 chord.
A 2 chord, a Roman numeral 2 chord.
That's right.
Because he's a jazz player, when he holds
He's
up those
referring
fingers,
to keys,
sharp or flat, and 2 flats, 1 sharp, key of G, and I'm going, and the only way that I was able to cope is I understood music in terms of its Roman numerals.
Right.
That's the only way I got through that.
There was a thread that at least brought those 2 systems together for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I teach to my students, or that's what my music methods are based on.
That's a great method, no doubt about
I
it.
want them to understand. I don't care that much if you like this particular song, and I'll teach you this. Of course, I'll teach you the song, but I'm going to use that song as a method of getting you to understand the inner workings of music.
That's how they begin to teach themselves later.
Yeah.
And, so many guitarists in the early phases, sometimes as many as up to the first 5 years, they're just parroting licks and little motor skill moves they've picked up, and they don't understand anything at all about music, keys, chords, and it really becomes crippling. And then they suddenly realize that I've been playing for 5, 6 years and I don't really know much.
Right.
That's a moment of where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
Now we can go forward and learn that, or, you can be defeated, but
Stay right where
you are and continue to parrot, things that you see and hear. But the people that go into that next level of thinking and learn notes and chords and learn what key you're in, for example, that's these are basics. But if you want to get wedding gigs or play with any horn players,
Right.
Horn players don't like to play in E and A
Correct.
like
And-
every blues rock guy on the planet. They
Yeah.
like to play in B flat and F.
And why? I used to think, when I first started bumping into jazz players, horn players, and I'd suggest the key of E or whatever, and they go, "What are you, a cowboy?"
Right.
That kind of stuff. So playing a real key. Came to find out over time that they can't play an E. The reason they ridicule you is because they can't play in the key of E, and the reason they can't play in the key of E is because it has 4 sharps.
Right.
And they don't want to think in 4 sharps all the time. But this is many years later, I came to realize
Right.
this. Okay, so horn players like to play in C, no sharps or flats, F, 1 flat,
One.
G, they'll play in G, has 1 sharp. 2 sharps, key of D, they don't like it. But they will play in flat keys. Why? Because that's what they were taught.
And of course, as guitarists, we see those open strings as lifesavers.
Yeah.
Any key that's E, A, D, you're golden. You always know where you are.
The guitar is, at least for open strings,
Right.
is a sharp-based instrument. Key of D, key of E, key of A, key of G. But we can, of course, we can play in any key.
Right.
Because this instrument is perfectly chromatic.
Which it makes it, for me, when I realized that, it made it easier to understand chord movements and things like that. And, it made it self-intuitive almost.
Absolutely.
At a certain point. Once that information got in there.
Right.
I had the right teacher. In our day, we didn't have a YouTube to go to, or
Right.
I don't even recall tablature being around yet
No.
in the 60s. We had to learn how to read a little bit, and you had to learn the basics and the
Absolutely.
foundations. Now,
Yeah.
you've got an instructional piece of music here you've brought along today.
I thought it'd be fun to try this.
Absolutely.
I know that we don't have. I'm going to turn this down. We don't have a close-up of this, but
Maybe you could quickly explain how the root note stays
yeah,
on a particular string, and
there's a sheet that I prepared for this, and if anybody wants it, if I can say this, all you have to do is just email me at douglargemusic at gmail.com, and I'll email you these sheets, either as a PDF or a JPEG, and you can print it out or view it online. I call this Jazz for Rock and Blues Guitar Players. It's a simple way to start getting some shapes playing. They're real easy because they're all root on 5. Roots on the 5th string only. There's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. The fingers never leave these strings. We're not changing shapes at all. All they do is stay right on these strings. And I've got, I hope you can see this.
they got you.
Okay. Second finger on the 5th string. It'll always be on the 5th string for these shapes, this exercise. And then the first finger will be on the 4th string, and the third finger will be on the 3rd string, and they'll never move. They're going to stay there, and all we're going to do is shift up and down, so that makes it simple.
Very cool.
We'll start with a D. Now, this basic shape, there's 3 iterations of the shape. This is the 7th, or you can call it the dominant 7th shape if you like. And if you want to make that minor, you flat the 3rd.
Flat the 3rd.
You put, this is the 3rd of the chord, like Mike and I were talking about earlier. Flat it, and you've got a minor 7th. So that's a dominant 7th, there's a minor 7th. And if you'd like to make it into a major 7th type chord, all you do is raise that from a flatted 7th to a natural. I know that many of you may not know what I'm talking about, but if you try it, I think it'll work out for you.
Well, let's play it for them.
Yeah, let's do that. Shall we try it?
Let's go. Let it rip. Wow, that was great.
Nice job.
Well, let's sit down and chat a little bit.
Okay.
Well, that was fantastic. You know what's great about those chord shapes is it allows for a continued alternating bass.
Exactly.
Bouncing back and forth from the sixth string. And when you're playing those kind of jazzy progressions, that just fills out everything.
It does. You got the bass going, as well as the chords. Here's another technique. Playing the same song. Yeah, I can do the same song, but doing it as a swing with a bass line.
Yeah.
Etc.
Very nice, yes.
I've seen a lot of guys doing that, particularly with seven.
I don't know if you
guitars.
remember, there was, she's gone now, but there was a great student of Herb Ellis who got some fame. Her name was Emily Remler.
A familiar name, yes.
A wonderful jazz player, and she was really good at quickly pinching and grabbing the chord and then walking those bass lines with carefully chosen notes that always let you know what chord you were heading to.
Exactly.
From that point on. But that's a wonderful style you've developed there for teaching, and that's a very sensible way to go across those chords. Now, for folks that aren't familiar with those sorts of changes, in the Roman numeral world, that would be referred to as 2 5s.
2 5 1. Like for
2 5 1.
Here's if I tip this way a little bit. Let's say this is 1. If that's 1, 2, of course, is going to be there.
That's right.
3 is going to be there. 4 is going to be there. 5, 6, and 7, even in the key of F. That's 1, F, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The pattern never changes on the guitar.
Right.
Which is good for guitar players because we're kind of simple people. In the key of G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1.
Which is the total diatonic scale.
That's the diatonic scale and the diatonic chords. In any given key, there's 7 chords.
That's right.
Build off of each of the individual notes.
And those shapes you gave us cover the rudiment notes we need to identify the chords.
Right.
Of course, when you get better at it, you can add more fully voiced chords with different either doubles of notes or additional extensions of the chords.
Exactly. But for the country players, all you needed to know was major or minor.
Right.
And then back to 1. And if somebody's, okay, so this song is a 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5.
Right.
And he goes, nope, key of C. And you go, oh, key of C. 1, 4, 5. Okay? And if a jazz player says this is just a 2, 5, 1 in the key of F, you go 2, but he's going to want you to play jazz chords.
Right. You might play a flatted 5 on the 2. Minor 7 flat 5 is very common on a 2-5 turnaround.
Exactly.
You know, so these are other shapes that you'd learn as after you understand the system.
Yeah.
then you can dress it up.
I've noticed something though, as a guitar player, when you work with piano players have their thing. Like if they're playing, they play their changes the way they play their changes, and their fingers go there. Like whenever they play a major seventh type chord, a Roman numeral 1 chord, they'll play it as a major 9 almost always. If they play a 2 major, which is outside the system, for instance, in the key of G, 2 is supposed to be a minor chord, but sometimes it'll be, a composer will ask for it to be a dominant chord, a major chord. Well, I've noticed that a lot of keyboard players will call it a flat 5. They'll play it as a flat 5. And because you don't know the peculiarities of that particular keyboard player, I've noticed just stay out of his way and play maybe just 1s and 3s.
Right, that way you won't get in any trouble.
Won't get in any trouble.
Yeah.
And if you do that, they're happy. You know, they go, oh, he's a great guitar player. He stays out of my way.
And that, again, it brings us, you know, knowing when not to play and fill every space so that you're listening to the different music that's happening around you with your bandmates allows you to help paint the picture a little better.
Really?
Are you going to be performing anywhere? We're going to be wrapping up here in a minute.
Yeah, during the summer, I have a band, and we'd probably work all year long if the opportunities were there, but you know, things are.
Sure.
It's called Rhythm Deacons. And during the summer, we play Canal Fest in Buzzards Bay and events, summer events.
Wonderful. And that, we're going to post the information where you can find Doug, and if you want to talk more about his music and his teaching, we're going to make that available for you folks. I'd like to thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Maybe you could pick a little bit on that chord change as we start to roll out.
Yeah.
And
how about this one?
Take a look at his right hand too, folks. That's just as important. That's the one that pays the bills.